watching From the Cape with Bass, hosted by Daniel Peterson.
Hey everybody, today we're here with great bass player Duncan Johnson. Duncan, can you tell us what your first musical experience was?
My first musical experience takes me back to high school. I went to South Peninsula High School and I played drums in the jazz band actually. And then I started my own band with some friends of mine called Eminence back in the day. And we played pop music because the school didn't have a pop band.
Yeah.
And then we played at the community chess carnival, things like Just the Two of Us, Careless Whisper we did. We did Yes to You by Sky. Oh, lekker bass line. So yeah, that's my first memory of performing the bass, yeah.
Okay, tell me, why did you choose the bass guitar?
As everyone says, the bass chose me. I'm sure so many people have said that. But what happened was, so I'm a saxophone player, predominantly, that's my main instrument. And I played in the Little Giants big band.
Okay.
But then this one day in rehearsal, there was about 4 or 5 sax players, trumpets obviously and trombones and stuff. But then the bass player didn't pitch up.
Okay.
And then George Werner, who's the leader of the whole thing, he told me, hey, but you play bass. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm like, no, man, just 3 notes, just come and play so long. Just like, to just rehearse, man. It's a rehearsal. And then the following week, bass player again didn't pitch up, and then George is like, hey, go play bass. And then I played that rehearsal as well, and then George told me like, okay, you're doing the gig on Saturday. I'm like, what? Because there was charts I had to read, so I was practicing my heart off that whole week. Needless to say, I messed up on the gig. But I didn't even know I played bass until I did. And yeah, at least I messed up in front of a good few thousand people. So.
Wow. I will never forget it.
I won't either.
Tell me, okay, I believe you studied at UCT. Can you tell us about that and your musical education before UCT?
Okay, so my musical education before UCT was just high school. I just did high school. I had a teacher there that taught me how to read basically, but not really about music. Man. It was just, here's a piece, play that. Oh, you got a nice grade, safe. There wasn't any like jazz knowledge. So when I got to UCT, surprisingly I got in, but I think that was because I was the only tenor saxophone player, and the year before me there were no. Anyway, I got into UCT and then I studied saxophone, composition and arrangement, specializing on saxophone with secondary piano as well. So that is the basis of my knowledge of theory of music. And everything else is street knowledge, as we call it.
So tell me, you play saxophone?
Saxophone, bass guitar, a little bit of piano, like just for arranging purposes. And I play piano in church actually.
I want to come there. I want to come to that.
Funnily enough, so George calls me what? The utility player.
Tell me about the albums that you worked on and the artists that you worked for.
Okay, so the artists, obviously I've done most of my recordings on saxophone. Like we just recorded an album now recently with Hilton Shoulders Kuma Club. Some great players in there. Sean Sanby on double bass, Clayton Pretorius on electric. At the same time, and it works.
Wow.
It's so nice. On bass, I've recorded with my band, Sounds and Words. Well, not my band, but the band that I'm in. Sounds and Words. Our album should be out by the start of next year.
So in that band, you're a bass player?
I'm the bass player.
So you think bass in that band, you think bass?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the nice thing about bass though, it gives me another perspective of listening to music instead of just hearing lead lines, which I do, but now I'm also listening to the bass, which is lekker. And I've recorded with Matthew Gold, Cape Town pop singer. I've recorded someone on some of his pop tracks, house music, deep house, and I mean that's been lekker. So.
Okay, cool, man. Can you tell me about the gear that you have?
Okay, the gear. First off, I'd like to say that I'm no gear junkie. The gear I have here is, this is a RB2 amp, Laney. And the cool thing about this is it's nice and small, I can carry it, it's not heavy or anything. And so for smaller setups, smaller venues, it's just fine.
Yeah.
But on larger venues, I can line it out, which is a
Perfect.
big bonus. The bass, so this is a Warrick Corvette rock bass, 6-string, way too many strings. But how I came about this bass was because when I started out playing with the Little Giants, I used the bass guitar that they had at the school.
Okay.
Because we are based at the school, Warrick Primary. And that bass was bad in terms of intonation. So I would play a note and I could hear like, hey, that sounds weird. So when I started playing, people saw me playing bass and they're like, what? I didn't know you played bass. And I was like, I didn't know either. but they liked my playing and they started booking me to play bass. So now I play bass and saxophone on the same gig. And anyway, so I realized I didn't have to get my own bass. And then I looked on the internet, on Facebook Marketplace, and I found a 5-string Warrick bass for a decent price, and then I bought it. But I didn't like the sound, man. It was very bright. It's not what I enjoy. And then I saw another guy put this on Facebook Marketplace, and I did a straight swap with him. My 5-string for his 6-string, plugged it in, I played it, and it felt so nice. It sounded nice, and yeah, and with the guitar.
I remember the first time I saw you at Mojo Market. I came up to you, I told you this bass is a nice warm tone because I just loved it from that audience point of view. I just loved the tone, and it's like, yo, when I had a chance to play it. So.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Oh man.
No way.
And then the upright.
The upright,
because I see you play upright everywhere. It's like I don't see the electric anymore. It's like this upright.
That is true, and I can thank Bradley for that. Bradley van Skalkwyk. So the upright, I've always wanted to play upright since I was in high school because I listened to Nora Jones, like that type of music and soft, and I always thought, yo, double bass would be so liquor. But no one told me all the pain you go through, the blisters and the bleeding. Okay, there's no bleeding unless you're doing something terribly wrong. The muscles that pain, there's all of that things you have to go through to play the double bass. But yeah, so eventually a friend of mine sent me a message like, hey, there's a price selling this double bass. So I'm like, okay, cool, let me check it out. Decent price as well. I obviously didn't have the money at the time. I had to make a loan and be like, hey, I want this bass, man. I got the bass eventually, and then I had one lesson with Wesley Rustin just before COVID started. And obviously COVID hit, and I couldn't have more lessons, man. But Wesley at least showed me like how to hold your hand at least. He told me the basics about the instrument. And then I just took it from there. I kept playing and just finding my way around the instrument, like especially with intonation and all of that. And then often when I play, I'm so self-conscious with what I'm doing that when I see another bass player, I'm like, okay, I need to play properly now, or like, you know, because obviously I've never had proper training. Whatever I'm playing is like street knowledge, I would call it.
But you fake it till you make it.
Yeah, and it's sounding okay so far, so I'm happy. Yeah, so that's where the double bass comes from. And Bradley's been encouraging me ever since. He's like, nah, come and do this jam with me, man. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to play? Saxophone or bass? He's like, nah, you can play bass, but not electric bass, bring a double bass. I'm like, Brad, you know. Like, nah, man, you're gonna make it, bro. I have faith in you, just come and play. And then I pitch up, and then I play, and then like, I cry while I'm playing because my hands are sore, but I keep going, and I'm learning so much stuff.
Wow, that's so cool, man. Duncan, do you have any advice for young up-and-coming bass players and musicians out there?
My advice would be, just go for it, man. Go for gold. Like I told you my story in terms of playing bass. I was thrown in at the deep end. I still, to be honest, I still don't consider myself a bassist, but I'm playing bass. If anyone else is listening to me, they won't know, like, hey, but that's a sax player, unless they actually know. But just looking at me, they're like, oh, it's a bass player. And influences are very important, who you listen to, listening to artists, because I mean, you can't speak French if you don't know what French sounds like. So it's the same with music. You can't play slap bass if you don't know what, if you're not listening to slap players or whatever it is you want to do. So listening to the right people firstly, hanging out with the right people. So if you want to learn how to play like Daniel, I'm gonna be like, hey Daniel, are you at home on Friday? Can I stick it? Can we laminate? You know, that's very important. And I think more important yet is it's not the gear you have, because this at the end of the day it's an inanimate object. Like it's just a bass. So someone else is gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna play so quiet one day when I get that. I'm gonna play like Sean one day when I get an instrument that he has. It's not that. Even that flimsy like the detuned bass that I was talking about. I mean, if you give that to Richard Bonner, he will show you flames. But so it's not ultimately the gear. If your instrument works, it's good enough. You know, I mean, it's going to be more difficult, but it's a good start. Like start where you are with what you have. That's what I believe.
Wow, man. Duncan,
so
thank you so much for making time for me and for From the Cape of Bass. Godspeed on your journey, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for liking and sharing this video with your fellow bass community. Please follow From the Cape of Bass on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much.